Welcome everyone to another fun innovation video. We had previous microkernel just-in-time compile and other stuff that I would think could be more innovative, or certainly was innovative in the 90s. And another thing I wanted to discuss already for quite a while is the sad state of UI, graphical user interfaces and usability. And so if you're new to this channel, not your regular, hey, buy the latest and greatest Apple devices, but some more in-depth discussion. And as even this Ars Technical article from even freaking 2005 already has here in the conclusion, many people consider the graphical user interface to be stagnant, differing little in the basic desktop Windows mouse icons and pointer concept from the original Lisa of 1983. And also, of course, they later write here, however, given the extremely long gestation of the graphical user interface from the humblest beginning, and given that personal computer sales rose exponentially, only the yada yada. However, where was it even? Where was it even? I just resized that. I should have probably not done that. Sans looking glass, 3D user interface, where was this? Whatever. And so let's take a quick look where we came from. Just go here through the nicely compiled list on Wikipedia with my commentary. So of course everyone probably who looked into this knows the earliest research. Long time ago, augmentation of human intellect, NLS, 1960s, so stuff 1960s, Douglas, Engelbert, and also Sutherland there somewhere. And then, of course, later Engelbart's work directly led to the advance of Xerox PARC, where also Steve Jobs took a peek look and got inspired, or some people say stole. Also, the Xerox PARC Alto personal computer had a bitmap screen. Before that, mostly teletype stuff, text, UIs, and it was not a commercial product, and so only was not a commercial product only at Xerox PARC, not a commercial product, but a couple of thousand were produced, used in Xerox offices and universities and so on. Alto greatly influenced the design personal computer during the late 70s, early 80s. Apple, Lisa, Macintosh, Sun workstations. Ironically, this stuff like a paper, 3x4, so not 4x3. And then also Blit Lisp machines. So long list, and we can quickly scroll over this. This video should not be I just show you Wikipedia. I have some other things to say. So in my opinion, we can go a little bit through that. But honestly, the basic concepts doesn't change much over the history. The Xerox Alto, 3x4, and I always find it a little bit funny looking at that. But also the Macintosh desktop, 1984, of course, it was way simpler, less graphical, black and white and stuff. Apple GS OS. But then, of course, other stuff, SGI, here what we also, O2 Octane, but this SGI 1000, 1K, and MEX Vision. Then GEM, also used from Digital Research, of all companies, as used in the Atari ST. Also fun stuff. I mean, personally, I've probably barely seen that. Just not so many people probably had that. Desk-made MSX View. Amiga, of course, Workbench, I've seen more at friends. But again, I only go over this briefly. I just want to highlight the history where we have come with, and you will notice that the stuff looks quite similar, right? They all have windows and icons, and everything is pre-wired up in some way. And I would argue as different as today on this desktop, or here I took the first gen iPad out of all iPad goodness, right? Sure, it was one of, but of course there were other portable things. EEPC, was the EPC? Probably came before the iPad, right? a lot of people give Apple a lot of credit for this stuff. Oh, there's even the camera. But in my opinion, this is, you can tell me what you want, but the biggest novelty here is multi-touch and more touch optimized stuff. Otherwise, it's just Windows. I mean, it's actually one step back, no overlapping Windows, just like Windows 1.1. And otherwise, it's still freaking buttons here. And also, yeah, one step backward, at least here on this iOS 3 or what this was, it used you could still make out buttons and don't mix it with static text and buttons as in latest, more flat iOS versions. So my main point is the stuff looked like that in the 80s, and yeah, RISC OS, right? And except, yeah, looked in the 80s, except DOS, which didn't have mostly fancy graphic, but text UI. Then of course Windows, Microsoft also inspiring there and copy the others. And X11 windowing system, which we still mostly use, except maybe Wayland. And again, it looked like that in the 1990s, and it still, also you don't see this, and still looks like that. And my main point is actually, all the people always talk about innovation here, KDE Plasma 4, GNOME 2, honestly GNOME 40 still looks similar. And that is my point and biggest criticism. There is a huge lack of UI and UX, not only user interface, but also usability, innovation. It's mostly always the same good old wine in new bottles, maybe more colorful bottles, more bling bling, more rasterman, enlightenment 16, more alpha, more blending. And I find this rather sad, right? If I look back 20 years that I do IT professionally and do Linux since I found Rock Linux there, or actually before that was Linux, it still looks the same, right? Most of the stuff, like compiling Linux here, actually my desktop Linux 200% load, just compiling some stuff, stressing my system. My whole use case, sure, you don't need to write code all day in a terminal, but otherwise browser, you had already a browser in 2000 and you still have one today, and basically my whole workflow is still the same. 90% of the stuff I do today, I do not much different, except trying to use an iPad, right? People always, previous video I said, is at the end of macOS. In my opinion, I had 3 iPads, I didn't use them much, right? I mean, it looks like nearly as new, although I gave it to my father for some 5 years, so it actually was freaking used. But it also looks so good because, I mean, what can you do, right? I mean, sure, the new iPad is faster, but even the iPad, right? People always giving Apple so much credit for the innovation. Actually, my newer iPad is further away. But it doesn't even matter much, right? You barely even notice whether this is some older, newer iPad. And I find it rather, unless you attach a keyboard and stuff, sure, you can type here, but by the way, it's also a little bit slow, or with the latest version of iOS. I type significantly, I type like 10 times slower or so, even if I like type fast, and certainly you can't like 10 finger type on that. So much to innovate my ass. And my biggest critique is actually, I think we should do UIs significantly different, and that is the point of my video, and not only the copy of Xerox Alto and stuff. And what I mean with that is not looking glass 3D stuff that is probably mostly useless, of augmented reality stuff, unless you are a mechanic working at some assembly line or car service or stuff, or airplane service or something with augmented reality, seeing some schematics and so on. But the biggest frustration and with me and software is that we should take more cue from like Unix scripting, and a lot of things are so much more efficient on a terminal. You see me constantly doing 4 files in something, in combining this with grep here of whatever, the regular shell scripting stuff. And all of this stuff you can't do with an UI, right? You can't just like for each window, for for everything, for every feature, you usually need to wait for the vendor. And so what I mean with that is allowing the user, the power user, to work much more integrated with the programs. So instead of 20 years of tweaking the alpha blending and nicer icons or less nice icons, depending on where you see, Apple even had something like this. And this was Apple HyperCard. Not sure if, maybe there were other things written in Apple Pascal, wow. And ironically, I've even personally never used that. And what this was, I'm not even saying we should develop like this. I'm only giving an example, and what this was is based on the concept of stack and virtual cards, and thus the name HyperCards. It probably, I think this articles and stuff usually gives this also more credit than it actually is. I think it, from what I figure researching that, it probably was relatively simple of having graphical stacks here and having clickable areas and linking stuff with hyperlinks together. But what I would take the biggest inspiration of here is that the user can modify this, and I think that is missing in a lot of professional UI workflow. Like, not like copying Apple HyperCard directly, because this clickable card stuff was actually, wait a second, I even have a video there. I have desktop video unmuted. Let's see, that probably could be that one here. And Computer Chronicles had a segment about that here. Let's see.
And if you look inside one of these little buttons, you'll see that its brains actually say, go to next card. That's how that button knows how to do what it does.
That's the script for that button.
This is how a customer or user would actually program the buttons themselves.
That's right.
And that is the biggest thing that I would actually want from modern UI, and that is that people can go in here and, for example, I was the last, sometimes working a little bit overlooking our accounting and controlling and stuff, and the bloody Windows software we run for legal reasons. This is bloody German company thing. Of course, virtualized and through some remote protocol and stuff. And this bloody accounting software is, by the way, usually one of the worst. And actually, I was actually thinking already 10 years ago to maybe do financial software. Maybe I would already be a millionaire by now. Maybe I should actually do that. But this is super frustrating, right? The buttons are at idiotic places. There's even some button always when you confirm something at the top on the bottom left of the screen. There's also some bloody overview cockpit shit thing, and always when I move my bloody cursor there, I always first hit the bloody cockpit thing, the overlay shit, then I need to move my mouse there. So for example, I would, from this bloody accounting software, I would first, if I could, modify the UI. So this is my more user editable UI. That the user, if he doesn't like some animation shit, he just can go there and disable this stuff forever, for good. Or other things like you don't like some size, you don't like some stuff. I'm not even saying it needs to, sure, we have open source and you can modify open source, but going into Firefox, as seen here usually on my channels, or even OpenOffice, is not an easy task. So what I would propose is, for a modern, amazing, more innovative UI, that the user could freaking go in here with the context menu and edit stuff. Or even here, if you want to have something in there, you can't even, sure, some software sometimes allows this, but only to some degree. And ironically, Apple has a relatively somewhat okayish thing for that, for developers, that previously was Interface Builder, and now maybe they still call it Interface Builder. And why is this Microsoft Doc storyboards? Interesting, didn't even realize that. Apple's storyboard and interface builder. And while I don't like this to develop software as a whole, I think this could be exactly that, what pro users, prosumers, of course not everyone would want to do that, right? I'm not naive to think each secretary, assistant and stuff, or CEO wants to edit his UI, but power users like sync accounting software, sync your browser. Ironically, even there, Apple, I don't use GNOME too much, and the last time I've used KDE was also a decade ago, not sure, I probably should check. But ironically, even Apple is not the worst. They're actually so much to my hashtag peakbugs and other grief with soldered SSDs and stuff. I'm not hating Apple 100% as much to admit that some things actually are at times good. Of course, it doesn't change. You can't change programs too much, or especially on the iPhone, right? With all the stuff Apple has, you can also, I think, ironically, sometimes you can go somewhere like podcast app or somewhere, or music app, and actually this is an old version, so probably not this one, or maybe this one, they change it so often, but some small things you can edit, for example, categories in the music app or something, only very small things. So my proposal would be to base the whole UI concept on that, similar to JavaScript, maybe better because JavaScript sucks, but maybe something better than JavaScript, and dynamically allow binding a lot of UI elements to dynamically, so that you can go in here like this button you want, you freaking like click here and like add freaking button, right? Ironically, even that Apple allows, and there you see that's actually the difference of all the small things why we don't have the desktop Linux and the small things that are actually at times quite good. Actually, I should have opened that Apple edit menu bar or whatever NS panel, because actually on macOS, for those who are new to the stuff, no, not that, but actually this toolbars, what is even this, what is it, NS panel, no, Apple edit, what is even window, what is this, window tool, I'm not even sure what the exact name was there in, but ironically, so that thing, here is toolbars, here, toolbar, window, events, human interface guidelines. Ironically, even there on macOS, Apple, most more sophisticated document-based applications allow you to edit this exactly there, context click edit, but this is only very limited. What I propose is, instead of, and not even, probably leave me in the comments below, I'm not sure if KDE and GNOME have copied that yet. Of course, there are some complications. For example, if the user edited something, like the user added a button here that he likes, or disabled some bloody like accounting software overlay shit, or what should happen on an update. Although this is, of course, everything is solvable. For example, if you add in the core, application core binary, some dynamically bindable properties that if the toolbar is modified and like the update has a new default button there, but it is modified, it's just not appearing there. Or even if it would appear there, if a software update of Firefox has a new button, then even it appears there and the user can remove it again, but whatever. Details, who cares about the details? So I think this would solve a lot of annoyances, especially like for example, also accounting software doesn't change so much, right? For 10 or 15 years, this bloody Windows accounting software really looks the same. Think SAP, of course we're not using SAP, we don't have so many billions to waste and become bankrupt like most people who try to use SAP. Sage and Lexware and all this other, or whatever the American equivalents are of Salesforce and stuff. And also allow workflows like, of course, this is not an easy task, right? I mean, and this probably contradicts, why is this not done before or not yet? I think is that companies don't want users to empower themselves and improve the software, right? This basically means improving and making the software more ideal for your workflow. Companies probably rather want to sell you a differently improved software next year and not have users improve their software already. For example, in the accounting software, for example, with double accounting here as legal requirement for limited companies as GM, I don't know US equivalents. But for example, you have double accounting, and so for example, you could even, instead of manually going in there in list and confirming payments and invoices, you could even, if you could script this like JavaScript in the application, you could even automate some stuff, right? The people for hours need to go through lists and confirm stuff. You could even write the program for each data entry of this table. So I'm not even saying I'm talking about editable buttons. No, I'm talking about really truly sync Excel scripting of Visual Basic, but on steroids, like certainly Visual Basic also sucks balls, but like an improved version of, if you will, of Apple script Visual Basic, like not hypercards, but on modern UI stuff, especially as we have already JavaScript in there. I mean, sadly, JavaScript, in my opinion, a rather convoluted, complex mess of a language. So, of course, JavaScript, like using JavaScript to bind and script all the stuff together, is somewhat a natural fit. It's even an Acrobat for all the JavaScript PDF goodness. But yeah, as usual, the devil is in the detail, and it's like, it sounds like a natural fit. Unfortunately, JavaScript sucks a little bit too much, as so much in the IT industry. But anyway, so I'm not even talking about editable buttons, but completely programmable data sources. Like you have a financing table, not only Excel, but even tables you have often, saying GNU Cache and stuff. Why can power users and like companies growing, having some automation needs, why can't you like even easily for each cell, row and column in this bloody table do some stuff? Usually, at least. Leave me in the comments below. Do you have examples where software does it really well? I'm somewhat, I mean, I will probably try to, maybe this is actually a good business idea. So maybe I should actually not try to be a YouTuber and do more IT. Just that you probably realized I want to have some fun here and not only argue with customers and inquiries and their wishes. We have a complete in-house UI here that we use for Windows and Linux of our Exact Scan and OCRKit and PDF Recompress stuff. And currently it's a little bit modeled of what is it, good artist, steal and copy and stuff of Steve Jobs, or what did he once say? Good artists copy, great artists steal. So of course we are great artists. So we inspired a lot on UI, on next steps based Apple's Cocoa there, or AppKit and UIKit stuff. It's based on Lua. I said this already a couple of times, like World of Warcraft and probably 50+% of the games, and Adobe Lightroom plus other stuff, which I find much more clean than JavaScript. Otherwise you could have done it with JavaScript. But and I'm somewhat tempted to actually try that out, and could even make this maybe a best-selling product potentially. Oh, and by the way, of all the quotes here of HyperCard, Wozniak once upon a time said, HyperCard opened up a new category of software and praised Apple for bundling it with every Mac. In 2001, Steve Wozniak called HyperCard the best program ever written. I'm not entirely sure, but there you see the scope of this. It's not like some YouTuber fantasizes some stuff. And ironically, I've neither seen it ever in action. Probably I should get a copy of HyperCard and use it for sometimes. What I, however, have seen in action is AppleScript, and our Mac software, of course, supports this to some degree, which ironically you need explicitly to program with some AppleScript terminology and stuff. And what that is, which is also stuff that is, correct me if I'm wrong, not sure if, sure, GNOME has Vala and stuff, but I think most KDE and GNOME. Leave me in the comments below if KDE and GNOME software is something equivalent. And ironically, and this is also the people always praising Apple for all the stuff that it's actually not the most amazing at Apple's reality distortion field, because AppleScript you need to explicitly program and provide. And I think this could be one thing, right? This could be some application framework where you have exactly this. user prosumer editable UI stuff of dynamically changing some stuff and extending that to your needs, and providing this with the same core application services. And ironically, this so far has not been. Where do I even have the, what did I closed the other one. So yeah, I think this could be some integrated thing of the application providing some high-level facilities like iterating document content, binding, like core functionality. In case of our scan software, that would of course start scan or setting scan parameters. We probably have here a nice help page. And so for example, and this is also what our application actually supports in exact scan on the Mac, and on the Mac only because there's not that much of a thing on Windows and like except Visual Basic. So what we support is, for example, set tell application. So how this Apple script works is, I think we even have a small example there because tell application exact scan to set profile to 1, set profile name to invoices, set resolution to 240 dpi, and document type to color, and destination folder to POSIX path. I'm not saying this Apple script is amazing. Actually, it is not. It's actually pretty messy stuff of hot. Anyway, I'm only saying this concept as it is pretty cool, and I think the whole thing should be used way more. And maybe this is also, except our microkernel stuff and stuff, on the high-level UI stuff, what the innovation that is missing in this, because like seriously, who cares how much alpha blending and icon bling bling that is? And sure, this Amiga Workbench 4.1 of 2009 looks more modern than that, but hey, it still has windows and buttons and scroll bars, and it's like you still work like it's 1980. And to give credit where credit is due, what I've seen back in the day, I think it was 1998-ish, 1996-ish or something, IBM OS2 Warp, something I also never really used but saw at neighbors, integrated, I think it was Warp 4, OS2 Warp 4, had integrated speech recognition of via voice that was actually like telling your computer to open some freaking folder and stuff. Otherwise, all that innovation for a big part also, like interface builder and dynamic stuff, of course, next step. And a lot of people give BOS quite some credit, but I would say I'm not sure it had something. It was a solid and snappy multimedia operating system, but I don't remember it having something like dynamic UI binding stuff in Apple script equivalent. But anyway, yeah, this is rather sad, right? This is also the compromise that on iOS devices, like previous video, I get so much less stuff done. I mean, starting with you only have until recently, like a year or 2 years ago, you only had full screen applications. Now you have split stuff. But even then, I'm so much less efficient here on a tablet. And when you think, I mean, this is anyway the irony, right? Apple calling this a computer, and you can like not compute much except with a, I think they constantly also, this was so old, where does it, not in Windows, whatever does it not calculate? All right, I think, genius. I think the bloody, now that I think about this, the bloody iPad never came with a calculator. You can't even freaking calculate on the on a computer. Not sure if the latest version of iOS includes. Those who never used an iPad, like, yeah, that was a thing that had a calculator on a bloody phone, but not on your iPad. Anyway, I think there is so much innovation that everyone only focus, even Apple, right? Apple only focus on graphical bling bling of skeuomorphism, of having here some wood stuff that of course they removed. And in some way, I wasn't even the greatest fan of this skeuomorphism stuff, but in retrospect, I have to say I like. By the way, I can't update this to new iOS version, right? Because software hardware integration. It's of course last iOS release for this old first-gen iPad. But I have to say the new application on iOS really don't look that good to me. Photo streamer later or whatever. Due to the flatness and recurrent criticism, you can barely differentiate static text elements with clickable text not clickable, touchable text elements. Anyway, that's it for this summary. Leave me in the comments below what you think. I think I probably try harder to do such stuff in our portable UI runtime here. The sad thing is, due to the nature of all the Apple-specific technologies, if you have a portable application that, well, on Windows and Linux you don't have much of such services, that actually are the best things of macOS. The best things are actually the most neglected things by Apple, because who cares about Apple script and hypercards, obviously. But this kind of stuff, if you want to support Apple script for your Apple users on the Macintosh, then it's like, yeah, there is nothing but native coding. That, unfortunately, that is a little bit the pipe dream of portable OS agnostic software development. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this overview. These are the more philosophical thoughts I want to provide you to the IT computer science community, and encourage people to not only play along at home, but also develop and think out of the box along at home, and give some reality check of innovation also, and not because like, yeah, 3D interface, because that helped a lot. Was actually using that. Anyway, that's it for this video. As always, I hope you enjoyed this and learned something. And leave in the comments below what you think to all this. Where do you have examples? Have you seen much of hypercard Apple script like examples? And last but not least, I think this would could transform if done right, and certainly that is a huge achievement. Probably by most companies like Apple and Microsoft only focus on graphical bling bling. Transform UI, like fixed function UI. Basically, the difference is between, similar to graphic cards, fixed function UI stuff like that, and flexible programmable vertex and fragment shaders, in terms of only having fixed function and actually programmable stuff, and could transform, if done right, actually transform usability of the user. Can just program some stuff and highly automate the stuff, right? This is the difference between being able to actually freaking automate stuff and why text command line UI stuff is still so amazing than fixed function UI stuff, where you as a user often don't have any chance and possibility to automate the heck out of it like you can do on a text-based UI. So yeah, that's it for today. As always, I hope you learned something. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and I hope to see you soon for more innovative and computer science discussions to come.